And we're live again. So awesome. Super nice to have you, Nandi. Welcome here. I'm going to hang on for a little bit till I can see some people join us.
Sure. Thank you for
Sometimes,
having me back.
oh, this is a really interesting topic, like Vedic astrology has always fascinated me. And I'll share a few things about my own life, that happened. And when I didn't think things mattered, they really did. And there was a reason behind a lot of things, which my mom kind of knew, but I didn't. So, hello everyone. It's Saturday expert interviews again. So, today we have the awesome Nandi Shivam. His last talk was really, really well received, and that's why we decided to do this again. And today we are going to talk about the lunar calendar and its impact on your mind. If you are watching this live, please say a quick hi. If you are watching this as a replay, you can always, post a hashtag as replay, and you can post all your questions here so you can always, find some answers to certain tricky questions, because I'm sure Nandi has a lot of answers for all our queries related to, Jyotish. So for those who are not familiar with Nandi, if you have seen the previous video, I'm 100% sure, you know about him. But for those who are new here, he is a Vedic astrologer. He's a yoga philosophy mentor. He's also the founder of Nataraja Jyotish. And today we're going to talk about different things like, lunar calendar, how to understand it a little bit, how it's important for you. And yeah, I'll just give it over to Nandi. So yeah, regarding the lunar calendar, we often just like the entire world follows the solar one, right? We look at December 25th as one day, or today is September 12th, but nobody really talks about the lunar calendar except for the Vedic system.
Hmm.
And people like there are different excuse me cultures that have their own calendars, and lunar calendar is also variable across. So if you can shine a little bit light on the importance of lunar calendar and why are those differences seen everywhere.
Yeah, so the lunar calendar it's interesting because the 12 months of the solar calendar actually come from the synthesis of the lunar and solar calendar. The reason there are 12 months is because there are normally 12 full moons per cycle of the sun
Mhm.
around the earth. And every 3 years we have a 13th full moon.
Okay.
So they don't line up 100%. The moon is going a little quicker, so it catches up. So the lunar calendar is important for our emotional well-being, our physical health. The moon is the fastest moving graha, not a planet, but a celestial body,
Mhm.
and it's the closest to the Earth as well. It's, if the Earth is the body, the moon is the subconscious. It's the mind that is enveloping or creating our physical reality. So not just for emotional well-being, but even for our physical health, it's important to kind of understand the impact of the moon.
Mhm.
Um, so even just knowing, the day, the tithi, with the tithi is the word for like the lunar day in this Vedic calendar. And just knowing that, you can kind of already have an idea of the person's mental and physical strength. What is their level of energy and so on. And if we're applying it just at a very basic level, what we all should kind of be aware of is the moon waxing or waning.
Mhm.
Because when the moon is waxing, we tend to feel some relief, things are moving. It's a good time to plan new things. But then when the moon is waning, it's getting darker and darker. Those are the times we want to kind of maintain the status quo. Just keep to your regular schedule. Don't plan anything new or don't start anything, at least at that time, because
Mhm.
then things are kind of in withdrawal. The energy is going within. So it's a good time to meditate, a good time to do house cleaning, things like that.
So it's more about like internalization versus externalization as well. So when you're saying when we're going towards the full moon, you can like put out a lot more energy out into this world. But when you are going towards a new moon, you just have to go inwards and inwards rather than directing all your senses and everything outwards. That makes a lot of sense, and I have to ask you this question that around the full moon or the new moon times, there is a lot of chaos out in the world, right? Especially like my husband, he is a pharmacist, so he would find, it's like strange events happening, or especially in the medical care, even in the hospitals and all, you just find strange things happening. So why are those 2 days so important? And what's the difference between the full moon versus the new moon on a mental level for us?
So I would add in there the half moon as well,
Okay.
what we call Ashtami.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Avamasya, which is the new moon,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have Purnima, which is the full moon. And Ashtami is, there's two of them, one in between each cycle. So those 4 days, really, things can be quite crazy.
Okay.
The reason, let's see what. So the new moon is like the end of a cycle. So it's like the destructive force, Rudra, is much more active, especially the day before, like the transition between the day before the new moon and the new moon. Those 2 days are quite crazy in a sense. It's interesting, they say that a lot of affairs happen on the day before the new moon. The person can get an idea, or they'll get this crazy idea around that time. And it has to do with the story of Kamadev awakening Shiva.
Okay.
So there's an interesting energy. It's like you're not thinking straight, or you can take wrong decisions at this time because it's a transition. There's all your subconscious is getting cleansed or whatever. So you may get a lot of crazy thoughts, but those are thoughts that you want to let go. So that's why we see people who, a lot of crazy things in the medical field, because most people, the average person, is not really consciously aware of what's going on. They're just kind of following their impulses. Crazy impulses, crazy things happen. So that's what I would say about the day before the new moon. Oh, my camera is out of focus. No, that didn't help. Oh well. I'm blurry right now.
Yeah, a bit blurry. Yeah, it
Let
is.
me see if this helps. No, okay.
Still.
Or I'll turn it off, turn it on. Yeah, don't know what's happening. I have to like back up a little bit and come back. Oh well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And for the full moon, once again, the moon has reached a transition period. So every transition period really creates a certain kind of tension, or it's reaching its fullness, but then it's going to start to wane. So that's why it's not as chaotic as the new moon, like the day before the new moon, but there is a sense of a cycle is ending again. So there can be a little bit of anxiety, that sort of thing. Personally, I feel like the new moon is really the toughest one. But the full moon, definitely, there's a little bit of anxiety there that can happen.
And what about the Ashtami or the 8th day?
Ashtami is, there can be a lot of restlessness, mental, because it's like your mind is half.
Okay.
It's a restless period, so it's a good time to kind of not start new things either, whether it's waxing or waning.
Okay.
And the most difficult part of the lunar month is from the Ashtami, or the quarter moon, before the new moon, if that makes sense. So it's like the darkest phase of the moon. So those last, what is it, 5 days or so, 5 or 6 days, those are the most, like, those are the times where you can easily get depressed and wonder what's going on with my life. Things aren't working. So those are the times we just have to remind ourselves this will pass. It's just a few days. We have to remind ourselves.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say a quick hi. So hi Vimarsha, nice to see you and thanks for watching this live. Hello Mohan. So he mentioned that he has Moon and Ketu in Pisces. So yeah, so to negate its negative impact or any personalized, you know, astrological things, it's not just the Moon and Ketu in the fifth house. There are other grahas going to see it, and so you won't get the complete picture. If you want the complete picture, I would highly suggest you reach out to Nandi, right? And he can set up a one-on-one time, and he can look at your chart and then give you the appropriate guidance rather than looking at just two things sitting in one house. But there are all these players around, which are keeping an eye on your house as well. So I would, highly suggest that connect with Nandi, and he'll be more than happy to draw a chart for you.
Yeah.
I can't see the username, but there's another nice comment that we have that, I have post chronic illness and supposed Lyme disease, and she's finding a very definitive pattern, symptom flares around the full moon and new moon. So typically 4 days before and about 2 to 3 days after, right? So those are the symptoms she's facing. So she's really interested to learn more about this. Though this is extremely, important because there's no conversation around it. And at the same time, if you look at the Native Indian culture as well, they would go by the moons. Like every ancient culture has typically followed the lunar calendar. As far as my knowledge is concerned, like we have different, like even the panchangs or the calendars within India would differ a little bit, like the North Indian versus the Western is maybe like 15 days, there's a difference. So yeah.
Yeah, some start the calendar on the new moon, some started on the full moon. So it's an interesting, yeah, it's just different traditions have arisen over time. Some have the new year at Diwali, some have the new year on April. So there's a logic to everything, right? So
Yeah, the Diwali New Year is more, I think, the financial New Year. Gudi Padwa is the start of the Ashwin month, so that's why we celebrate Gudi Padwa. And yeah, and we are in a really interesting phase right now because we are in the Pitru Paksha, right? We are in that ancestral 2 weeks of ancestors, and the new moon that's coming up is going to be super important, for just paying respects to your ancestors. So, can you talk a little bit about that as well? I know I'm developing the topic.
no, I mean it's related. It's part of the lunar calendar in a way. So yeah, this particular paksha or half phase or fortnight, we could call it. It's not a full month; it's half a month. Is related to the ancestors. So it's the period where the Pitraloka or the ancestor realm is open, I guess you could say, and you can easily communicate with your ancestors, send prayers for them. Well, in Hinduism, why do we pray to our ancestors or pray for our ancestors? It's because we believe that they will reincarnate at some point. So it's not just that they rest in peace, which is the Western religious belief is to rest in peace. But in Hinduism, we believe, sure, you want to be in a good place between births as well. But it's really to maintain a positive connection with them and welcome them back, make them feel that they are welcome back and that we want to continue working on our karmas together and that they can guide us also because they see things from a higher level right now. So it's for guidance, and then in return, in gratitude for that guidance, we also give a space for them to be reincarnated back in the family. So that's what Pitra Paksha would mean from a practical perspective.
It's nice, and we are still carrying DNA that's been passed on from generations and generations, right? And a lot of behavioral characteristics are inherited. So, making peace with them, respecting them for everything that they give you, surely is like a really nice sign of, just.
Yeah, even just healing that ancestral karma inside you, it's a good time for that as well. Because in a way, our ancestors continue living on through us as well.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So, how does one understand their connection to the lunar calendar or lunar cycle? So, for someone that's absolutely new and they've probably never even looked at the lunar calendar, where does one start and what days to look for? If you can guide us regarding that.
Yeah, 100%. So apart from like knowing the energy difference between the waxing and waning, and then the new moon, half moon, full moon, those are the most important, just regardless of your birth chart or whatever. Those are the basic calendar elements you'd want to know.
Mm.
Um, and based on your personal chart, so the transit of the moon, so just the movement of the moon through the different zodiacs has an impact, and each one has a specific kind of effect.
Mhm.
Um, the one that we do want to kind of be aware of is when the moon is in the eighth house from our native moon. So let's say you have moon in Aries
Mm.
and the moon is in Scorpio. That he's usually there for about, per zodiac it stays about 2.5 days. So 2 or 3 days of the month
Okay.
will be a little more challenging for your physical health, um, emotionally. Things will just not seem to be going the way they're supposed to. It's just a bit of a strange time of the month.
Okay.
So if we can mark those days on our calendar and remember, okay, if I'm feeling crazy on these days, just let it be. Or I do something like that would normally work, and then the person's reaction is like
Mm-hmm.
the opposite of what we expected.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a very strange kind of. It's also the eighth house is the Ayos Bhava, so
Okay.
it's good for illnesses can show up around this time. So
Okay.
symptoms of illness. So it's not a good day for healing though. So it's not a good day to. So as an Ayurvedic doctor, usually, if it's good to know the client's chart and do it when the moon is transiting the fourth house,
Okay.
because the fourth house is the house of healing, medicine, while as the eighth house is more the surgeon, cutting open
Okay.
things.
Okay. So not gentle at all. It's just like one. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, when things are difficult, what it means is that your subconscious is cleaning out. It's like when you have a nightmare or a bad dream. You don't want to remember the dream. You don't want to think
Yeah.
about it too much, but it's a necessary process to clean out your subconscious. So those days, are good days to write things down and burn them,
Mm-hmm.
because lots of things can be coming up emotionally at that time. So the good thing is that it's an opportunity to do the house cleaning.
I'm gonna mark all the days. I think I can already feel it. The past few days have just been, I don't know if it's the fortnight that has something to do with it, but yeah.
Yeah, we're in the last phase right now, so it's we're on the 10th waning moon
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And what about your birth tithi? Like you were talking about, understanding a person's characteristics from the tithis. So that is really interesting. So would different people born on different dates like exhibit certain specific characters or what's?
yeah, there's a scriptural reference that talks about it. It's a bit some of it is a bit extreme, so I probably won't read it on. I don't want anybody born on a tithi to get offended.
So, what about the 12th? Because I was born on the Shukla Dwadashi. So I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know
So,
how.
oh,
I mean,
Shukla Dwadashi.
Shukla
Okay,
Dwadashi.
already. Okay, so just in a general sense, if you're born in the Shukla, you're almost at the full moon, which is good. So that means that overall you're emotionally strong and able to. You're not too hypersensitive to fluctuations of the moon. It's like we're
Okay.
all affected, but people who are born in the waning
Okay.
phase or the dark moon, the moon is pretty dark.
Yeah.
They're usually a little more emotionally unstable.
Okay.
They're more they go through ups and downs. Like those are the people who have more psychological, emotional challenges.
Okay. Okay.
So if we know that, like if our child has it, then it gives us the ability to be more understanding and just
Yeah.
consciously be aware that we need to be more patient with this person. I mean, if we observe, we're supposed to already think that way, but if we know specifically, it kind of helps us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about, okay, so the new moon and the full moon, how different are people born on the new moon versus the full moon?
I'd say it relates more to the relationship life. Like, how do they relate to people? If they're born in the waxing moon, they tend to be more outcoming and extroverted.
Okay.
They express their emotions more freely.
Yeah.
That sense, people born in the waning moon, they're a little more introverted,
Okay.
emotionally speaking. So it doesn't mean they don't feel things or anything. It's just they may suppress their emotions more,
Okay.
and so that can be a problem as well. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so if you're an emotional person, but your nakshatra may show you are an emotional personality, but
Hmm.
your moon is waning, so then there's a conflict. So you see, it's one even in doesn't mean that one is better than the other. Just the natural flow.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be the biggest difference.
Hmm.
More of an introverted on the waning.
And how would, like, I have to, I mean, I don't know if there's a direct relation, but how would, doshas be impacted with the lunar calendar? Is there such a thing, or um,
Mm, um,
because
I would
kapha
say,
directly represents, like, in the texts, in Ayurvedic text, we talk about, kapha as being represented by moon, Saumya Guna or the
mhm.
moon. So I'm like, maybe the full moon is going to be more kaphagenic, right? But what about the, like, other doshas, or am I
Maybe
just
indirectly. It's not directly, but maybe indirectly. The waxing and the full moon would definitely have a more kapha type of energy to
okay?
it. And the waning would be more of a pitta.
Okay.
So the lunar energy is stronger during the waxing, and the solar is stronger during the waning.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. And then Vata is everywhere else.
Vata would be the transition period. So like Ashtami,
Okay.
the transition. Ashtami definitely would be very Vata, like unstable and uncertain. And
Okay.
yeah.
You also mentioned, that certain days are important for certain people. Understanding the lunar calendar is more about understanding a bit about your chart and mapping those specific days for yourself. So uh, which days to look for, like, we know, okay, this is my birth date, on a certain tithi, but
Mhm.
and then we talked about when the opposite, like, the zodiac of the opposite, or zodiac is in the opposite sign, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Any other dates that one should be a little bit more careful or pay special attention to? Is there a better day to start things,
Hmm.
tithi wise, or end things,
Um, I mean, you definitely would want to find out your specific chart to get a like in a general reading, and you want to start implementing that. I could help you with anyone who wants that. They can contact me. But just in a general sense, the eighth house position of the moon is an important time, and also the birth nakshatra when the moon is in the same nakshatra that you're born.
Mhm.
So that day of the month is important. It's related to your prana. So it's the
Okay.
day of the month that you will be the most able to maximize recharging your prana. So a lot of people like traditionally will go to the temple.
Okay.
So I mean, if you don't go to the temple, you can practice more pranayama. Just mark that day as a day where you spend some time, a little
Mhm.
more than you do, or if you don't at all, at least that one day of the month to take. So I would say that would be the other most important day of the month.
Mhm.
And also based on specific, like if your focus is to do something related to your career or plan for your finances, then it's just really based on which house of your chart the moon is transiting. So it's going to be different for each person.
Okay.
Like if it's the second house and the 10th house, those are good for money and career. If
Mhm.
it's the first house, then it's good for time that self care, self development.
Mhm.
The fourth house and the seventh house is good time to focus on family and relationships.
Mhm.
So that's sort of the dynamic. Fifth and ninth, zodiac from the moon, then you would look at studies, any kind of studies, whether it's just your personal interest, spiritual studies, higher studies, university.
Mm-hmm.
So those the things you can do to maximize the use of the energy on those days.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, it's very specific to your chart. So if you know how to read your chart, then you can just kind of go at it and
Mm-hmm.
pick those days. If you don't, then yeah, you can book a reading and we can go over that.
Mm-hmm.
The 12th, so that when it's in the sign just before your moon sign, that would be like the 12th. That is also a good day for going inside. It's kind of like your new moon. It,
Okay.
for you personally, it's like the end of your cycle. So it's a good, usually we feel more inclined to seek liberation from things. We want to disengage a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's an interesting question we have from Soumya. Can you mention one auspicious day in November 2020?
Okay. Well, what is it for? Are we able to see what is it? What?
Yeah, yeah, Soumya, what are you looking for? I think it's
It's
going to be Diwali this year. So,
yeah, like Diwali. So the festival days are usually, in a general way, auspicious for most things. And once again, it depends for what, you know. So there's auspicious for marriage, for buying a house, for, you know, if it's just general, then any day is as good as another. If we're looking specifically, then you know we'll look specifically for that.
mhm,
So usually, like that's why you would have like a family astrologer that you would always, you know, you don't always have to be paying this person, or they'll just be like a consultant, you know.
mhm.
And then the person, you have that relationship with this person. So usually you'd have someone you'd consult for that. But yeah, I mean, in November, let me look at the calendar just for the fun of it. Why not?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So my birthday, according to the Indian calendars, is 2 days ahead of my actual birthday.
Oh yeah.
Shukra, yeah, Tulsi Vivaha.
Yeah, so that's another thing. So once a year, obviously, the tithi that you're born each year is also important. That's kind of like your lunar
Birthday.
birthday. Yeah, so it floats around. It's 2 or 3 days before or after usually.
Hmm.
So that's an important day once a year that comes around. So the day every month would be your moon nakshatra, and then once a year would be your birth tithi.
Okay.
Yeah, and that day you really want to take some time. You know, some people even do like a like a 1 week retreat. They go
Oh,
out and they just spend it for them.
yeah, yeah. I did that last year, not on the tithi, but around my birthday. I just took a time by myself, 2 days and just do
Mhm.
whatever you need to, just spend time, understand. So that's interesting. Soumya is saying she wants date for a C-section.
Oh, so see, yeah, so that's not going to be the typical auspicious actually, because it's a C-section. It's interesting. You're going to need the time where the knife is required. See, so it may actually be an inauspicious day, but it's auspicious for that.
Yeah, yeah.
See, so it's very specific. So it's a misnomer sometimes. It's not just inauspicious, auspicious. It's appropriate, I guess. What's the appropriate day for that thing?
Mhm. So when we talk about the 3.5 muhurtas, like in the Vedic calendar where you can just do anything and everything, right? So Akshaya Tritiya is one of them. I think the Diwali Padwa is the other one.
Mhm.
And Dasera probably is the third one. And there's a half day somewhere here. I don't even remember which one it is.
Like for the month of November, we're talking.
No, no, I'm talking
Oh.
about like in the Hindu calendar, we talk about the Sade Teen Muhurta. In like my language, we talk about Sade Teen, which is 3.5. And
Hmm.
these are 3 days which are like completely good for anything and everything. And then there's the one half day, which is again, auspicious, but maybe it's more to do with buying and all, not really to do with surgeries, because you're right, certain
Yeah.
days are good for certain things.
Yeah, those days wouldn't be recommended for surgery. I mean, if surgery is a surgery, you just have to do it when you have to do it. But um, yeah, C-section, it's that's an interesting thing. You know, what are the reasons before choosing a date. Um, I mean, I would probably pick a day where the moon is in the fourth house.
Mhm.
But then again, it's a child being born, so it's. I would just avoid. Okay, what I would say in this case is to avoid the transition periods.
Okay.
That would be the most important thing in this case, to avoid like new moon, Ashtami, full moon, those transition periods. Do it on any other day.
Okay.
That would be a general recommendation.
Okay. Yeah. Now going back to the Sade Teen Muhurtas, I was right. One is Gudi Padwa, Chaitra Shukla Paksha, I think Prathama.
Mm,
There is the Akshay Tritiya, which is the Vaishak Shukla Paksha Tritiya. And the third is Dasara,
yeah,
which is the Ashwin Shukla Dashmi. And then the half is, I think, Bali Pati Prada.
yeah. So those days would be good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
No,
certain times of year, like things kind of line up. So that's why we have these festivals. The festivals do mark very auspicious times.
okay.
Things where the energy is flowing well. That's why people come together.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So if any festival usually is considered an auspicious time
Okay.
in a very general way. So it's good for starting things, starting new business projects, um, looking for a new marriage partner. You're going to meet lots of people. You might meet her. you know so it's a way of bringing people together for new things to happen. That's why these festivals exist.
Mhm. And regarding health conditions, when people talk about the moon affecting health conditions, would it have more to do with the emotional aspect or the physical aspect as well, or that would depend on the chart again?
Both. The moon is connected to the manas, but it's also connected to the prakriti.
Okay.
So the moon is twofold. It does affect the physical health directly,
Okay.
um, as well as the emotional state. I mean, in Ayurveda, we know that both are interconnected. If you're
Yeah.
physically not well, your emotions aren't going to go
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah. Yeah, but as a direct impact, like would the symptoms get worse? Because sometimes, you're emotionally feeling worse and that's why you notice more pain,
yeah.
right? But sometimes there's actually more pain and, you're noticing more pain, right? Yeah.
Um, Yeah, because in the personal chart, you could have the ascendant, which is directly the physical body, regardless of the emotional state. So if there's something going on with the ascendant, then sure, something more physical is maybe happening.
Okay.
Um, but the moon, I guess, yeah, since it's the emotional state, it will maybe more from a in-out sort of manner it will impact. But it seems to be quite direct when you feel it, I guess.
Okay. Okay. No, thank you for sharing all this information. And, it's really like my honor to have you here. And I'm sure all the listeners will start looking at their Tithis, and start celebrating the Vedic birthdays, if nothing else, that's the one day you need to really look for.
Mhm.
Any other suggestions or any other like comments before we
Wrap up.
sign
Yeah. So another thing that the tithis are used for in traditional Vedic culture is the worship of the Ishta Devata.
off? Okay.
So different. We have Pradosham, which is for Shiva,
Mm-hmm.
and for Vishnu, Vaishnavas will worship on Ekadasi.
Mm-hmm.
Ganesha is Chaturthi. So each tithi also has a certain deity, which is a certain energy. So based on what you're. Sometimes we need help. And why we worship on the tithi is because the Ishta Devata is really like the form. It's the personal aspect of the universe or God. And so the tithi does have that, if you're going through a difficult time and you just need that help, your life is going sideways, you need some help. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have a particular tradition that you follow, then doing like a regular temple worship or practice on those tithis related to your tradition helps to recharge your aura, and really heal any trauma inside, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Because
Mm-hmm.
the moon is all about that motherly, that healing, nurturing type of energy. So if you know what is your connection or what is your tribe, then you can benefit from that by using these days.
So how would fasting on a tithi be different than fasting on a certain day? Because the last time we talked about the var, right? And see,
Mm.
for me personally, I would fast on Tuesdays. Now, this is my story that I used to fast on Tuesdays and I would always pick fights. Right. And I think because I'm like a combination of pitta kapha, so fasting really aggravated, my pitta at the time. Like when I
Mm.
was in my prime, like teenage, I was like just transitioning into this like pitta cycle and I would fast and I would pick fights. And then I also would fast what is known as Angarak Chaturthi. So that's like I think Chaturthi that falls on a Tuesday, which just comes twice a year, which is easy, and it gives you all the benefits of all the Chaturthis, I think. So I just wanted it to be easy. But what would be the difference on fasting for maybe like every Tuesday versus every Chaturthi?
Mm. Um, I guess doing it every Tuesday would be more. Mm, I mean, both are good.
Mhm. Like, would there be a difference, or it is just about your faith and what kind of
It's kind of that. It's kind of based on whatever is your tradition.
yeah.
Um, the tithi, in my understanding, fasting on the tithi is kind of it goes a little deeper. It really works with the subconscious, so it has a mental emotional aspect. So let's say I guess it would depend the reason. Why are you fasting? What's your purpose? If it's just the physical health aspect, the day of the week would
Okay.
be the most important one. If you're fasting because you're trying to work through some tough karma,
Hmm.
like you're not having good, like your relationship life is not going well, you're not finding your partner or whatever, then the tithi would be more important.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're
And
having difficulties in your work, like even in your career, you're not in a good relationship with your boss, or you're not in a good relationship with your family, then I would recommend fasting on the tithi, because tithi is really about any kind of relationship aspect of your life. Well, as Vara is really the health aspect, the Agni
okay.
aspect.
Okay. Well, that's a very interesting, difference. And what about just establishing a connection with your Ishta Devta? So then you choose the Tithi more because it's more like mind, like
Yeah,
that.
it depends. If you're going to the temple every week, then you would just go on the day of the week. It
Okay.
depends on how often you go to the temple. Um, the more, the merry. When it's your Ishta Devata, you're developing. It's like you're in love with someone. You
Yeah.
want more of it.
Yeah.
So,
And
and so the Tithi is the strongest day of that, in my experience, that the Devata can be really experienced strongly.
mhm.
Um, and then the day of the week is really just kind of a regular contact point.
Okay.
So if you're going for the first time, you want to meet up for the first time, go on the Tithi.
Okay. Well, that's a good suggestion. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for enlightening us with some amazing Vedic wisdom. And I mean, I just hope more people would implement that, right? Like, I grew up in a Maharashtrian household, but we always celebrated 28th November as my birthday rather than, as I grew older and my mom was very traditional, she would make it a point to remind me, oh, it's your birthday, today, even
Mm.
according to the Vedic calendar, right? But pretty interesting. Yeah, that's why I was named Manjiri because it was around Tulsi Vivaha time and the flower
Oh yeah.
is called Manjiri. So that's why, yeah, he named me. So it was kind of interesting. And the more you learn about it, the more curious you get. And it it is very specific, like the solar calendar is nice because that's how the world operates, right? But I think the lunar calendar is more about your connection with yourself. When you understand these tithis, when you understand your days or specific, you can plan so many things in your life, according to your requirements rather than just, following what the world goes on. So again, we have Siranjib Das, Mars and Ketu in the third house, Libra ascendant. Okay, he will be more than happy to do all the consultations for you one on one because as I mentioned before as well, see, there is Mars and Ketu in the third house. Again, you have a specific ascendant, but there are other players in the houses too, right? There's not just three people sitting there. So please connect with Nandi. He's an excellent astrologer. He'll be more than happy to, if you've never done a chart before, get in touch with him. He'll do your chart. If you're facing any kind of challenge in your chart, he'll also help you find solutions, because that's the whole point of Jyotish, is to bring light to whatever darkness you're perceiving, right? So feel free to connect with him. You can find him on natarajjyotish.com. You can find him on Facebook. uh, just let me know here in the comments, and I'll make sure I connect you with him, right? But just rather than looking at the online charts or something, which those are generalized predictions. They are interesting, they're very interesting, but they're not on point always, because
It's
they're not.
specific. You're getting, it's like I give you all the toys, but
Yeah,
then it's a big puzzle to put together.
yeah,
So, and sometimes life is this big, but we're only living this much right now. So we don't need, all the information is not always relevant all the time.
yeah,
It can be relevant. So we have like planetary periods
yeah,
where the chart is showing you what,
yeah,
but then you have to see the when. So if it's not going to happen for 20 years, why are we worried about it
yeah, yeah.
in that sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's interesting. So please, guys, everyone, just connect with him and get your personal charts done, and you'll find so much more information that's relevant to you, because it's your chart. It really gives you an insight on to your own being. And sometimes certain things you might perceive as not so great might open up to be great things for you. Like when I started learning my chart, I was like, wow, every time I thought I was short tempered or angry, but I also have this grit of just going on and on. So thank you once again. It's an honor to have you as always, and I'm sure you'll be back. on-
Why not? Yeah.
yeah, thanks so much once again. Thank you all for watching. Namaste.